Dr. Sechitoleko is that there needs to be an innovation for mingling posho or kalo. So I think maybe the innovators should go and think about this because it's an idea to pay attention to. Your Excellency, just before we get into a video that will give us just a brief overview of the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals and how far we have gone, allow me invite a young lady, a young person, who is going to give us a beautiful song, because the key to the Sustainable Development Goals is leaving no one behind. And that is the conversation we've had from morning, and we will have it today entirely and tomorrow for this 2-day conference. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me invite Tayebo Anita Mjisha, who is going to give us a very brief song about the Sustainable Goals. Let's give her some energy with a round of applause. We are talking about young people and not leaving them behind at all.
Thank you so much. My name is Tayebo Anita Mjisha. I'm from Skylands International School, and I'm 12 years old in year 7. Today I'm going to sing a song about agriculture, and which is going to help us know more about what we do during our daily lives. Please be blessed as we get to know what agriculture means through singing. Thank you.
Agriculture is a backbone, the backbone of Uganda and Africa, the mother of the world. We thank you, Lord, for the soils and the climate we have, the pearl of Africa, Uganda, your land. Agriculture is a backbone of Uganda and Africa, the mother of the world. We thank you, Lord, for the soils and the climate we have, the pearl of Africa, Uganda, your place. When I compare the nations in Uganda, I praise the Lord. Your nature is amazing. Your fruits are natural and fresh for health. What a game agriculture in you. Agriculture is a backbone of Uganda and Africa, the mother of the world. We thank you, Lord, for the soils and the climate we have, the pearl of Africa, Uganda, your place. Agriculture is a backbone of Uganda and Africa, the mother of the world. We thank you, Lord, for the soils and the climate we have. Agriculture is a backbone, the backbone of Uganda.
Thank you.
Let's give Anita bigger love, more love than that. Someone once said in Uganda, it's the only place where you just get seeds and throw, and they will grow without you even doing anything. Am I lying? Am I lying? And someone said, probably we can even throw money somewhere in the soil, and the money grows. Or you get your buttons off and throw them somewhere, and tomorrow you'll find shats in the shamba. But of course, Anita was speaking to how we still doubt that Uganda is agriculture is a backbone. Yes, because of statistics, of contribution to GDP. But if up to now, since morning, we had kept you here without anything to eat, I don't think the level of attention would be the same as one that we have right now. So, Your Excellency, like I said earlier on, we had a discussion about leveraging science and technology, but there was a much earlier panel which spoke about leaving no one behind through SDG localization and partnerships. And I'm glad that the person who is sitting at your immediate right is the focal point minister for SDGs, and of course, Dr. Albert Byamgisha here, who heads the secretariat. And I'm glad to announce to you that we moved from position 143 out of 163 to now 136. And probably when we come for the third edition of the SDGs, we will be able to move into from 100 and go to those 2-digit figures. That is what we'll be looking at. I will ask the technical team to now play us a video. And Your Excellency, this is just a video that is showing us how far we've gone with the implementation, the successes and the challenges still there, but also the future for SDG implementation in the country. Let's take our eyes to the screens.
In 2016, Uganda joined 193 UN member states in adopting the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Since then, the country has made significant strides in its journey towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. And with the numerous localization efforts, these SDGs have been integrated into national development plans and policies with a goal of ensuring that no one is left behind. Leave no one behind is a central and transformative promise of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and its Sustainable Development Goals. It represents the unequivocal commitment of all UN member states to eradicate poverty in all its forms, end discrimination and exclusion, and reduce the inequalities and vulnerabilities that leave people behind and undermine the potential of individuals and of humanity as a whole. Uganda's inspiring journey towards sustainable development highlights various initiatives and efforts undertaken to uplift the lives of its people. It recognizes that sustainable development can only be achieved when every individual is included and empowered. Education is the foundation for a prosperous future. In Uganda, significant strides have been made to improve access to quality education through inclusive policies and investments. More children, especially girls and marginalized communities, now have the opportunity to learn, grow, and fulfill their potential.
Education is a shared responsibility. Government plays its role, and the family must play its role. That's when we will move together as a country.
A healthy population is essential for sustainable development. Uganda is dedicated to improving healthcare services, particularly in rural areas. Through the expansion of healthcare infrastructure, increased access to essential medicines, and community health programs, Uganda is working towards ensuring that every citizen can lead a healthy life.
We approach health with 2 strategies. Just, I imagine, as it is done in many countries. The 2 strategies for health are preventive health care on the one hand and curative health care in case somebody gets sick. Prevention, number 1, cure if you can't prevent. That's our strategy.
Gender equality is a cornerstone of Uganda's development agenda. Efforts to empower women and promote gender equality are evident across the country. Through initiatives such as promoting women's entrepreneurship, ensuring equal access to economic opportunities, and combating gender-based violence, Uganda is creating an environment where everyone can thrive.
The overreaching objective of the Paris Development Model is to increase household incomes and improve the quality of life of Ugandans with a specific focus on total transformation of the subsistence households into the money economy.
Uganda recognizes the importance of sustainable agriculture and environmental conservation for long-term development by promoting climate-smart agriculture techniques, supporting smallholder farmers, and preserving its rich biodiversity. Uganda aims to build resilience, protect natural resources, and mitigate the impacts of climate change. Ensuring access to clean, safe water and sanitation for all is crucial. This aims at providing access to safe and affordable drinking water, promoting proper sanitation practices, and improving water management systems. Reliable, sustainable and modern energy for all aims to address Uganda's issues on energy and climate change by promoting renewable energy sources, improving energy efficiency and expanding access to electricity throughout the country. Building resilient infrastructure, promoting inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and fostering innovation aims at enhancing economic growth, productivity, and innovation in a sustainable manner. Uganda's goal is to invest in infrastructure, industries, and technological advancements to support sustainable development for all its people. Making cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, and sustainable addresses the challenges of rapid urbanization by promoting affordable housing, sustainable transport, access to green spaces, and inclusive urban planning. With these, Uganda can create livable cities and communities that provide opportunities for all while minimizing environmental impact. Achieving the SDGs requires collaborative efforts. Uganda has forged partnerships with various stakeholders, including government agencies, civil society organizations, and the private sector. These partnerships have played a crucial role in implementing innovative solutions, leveraging resources, and maximizing impact. In the next 7 years, Uganda aims at reducing income inequalities, promoting inclusive economic growth, and addressing governance issues. All these efforts demonstrate Uganda's determination to build a more inclusive, sustainable, and equitable future for its citizens.
And that all thanks to the Office of the Prime Minister, under which the SDG Secretariat sits, that is headed by Dr. Albert Byamgisha, as I mentioned earlier, and of course the focal point minister, the Right Honorable Justine Kasule Lumumba, who will later on as well be giving us more and more discussions about this. Of course, there is nothing that we can do without partnerships, Your Excellency, and that is one key aspect that has been emphasized in our conversations and in our statements. And even the achievement that I talked about earlier is because of the localization efforts. I said earlier on in the morning that sometimes when we meet in such beautiful hotels, we tend to forget about that rural woman, that rural man who has to understand what these sustainable development goals mean, and that every action they do may impact one or many of the sustainable development goals. So that is one of the reasons why domestication is still being challenged in some countries, including Uganda. But in part of the partners, we cannot leave aside the non-governmental organizations. And I would like to invite on behalf of the NGOs, Dr. Moses Isoba, who is the Executive Director of the Uganda National NGO Forum, to come us and give us a brief statement. Let's give Dr. Isoba a round of applause as he comes to speak to us.
Thank you. Your Excellency, the Vice President of the Republic of Uganda, the Cabinet Ministers here present, Your Excellency, the Ambassador of Denmark to Uganda, the UN Resident Rep, all protocol observed. My name is Dr. Moses Isoba, and I'm the Executive Director of the Uganda National NGO Forum. And it's my singular pleasure to make a statement on this second National SDG Conference on behalf of civil society in Uganda, a conference organized under the theme of promoting inclusive national and continental actions for accelerated delivery of SDGs and Agenda 2063. For those not familiar with the Uganda National NGO Forum, it's an umbrella organization that brings together NGOs in this country with a mandate to influence democracy and governance processes, and at the same time to improve and enhance the operating environment of NGOs. As a leading platform for civil society, CSOs in this country have continued to play a pivotal role in fostering sustainable development. We have coordinated and mobilized CSOs to actively engage in advocacy undertaken, capacity building, promoted collaboration among civil society actors, government institutions, and other stakeholders. Through our work, we have witnessed transformative power of partnerships and the collective efforts required to achieve the SDGs. We recall that SDGs were adopted in 2015. And now, 8 years down the road, we need to be taking stock of what the government and all key stakeholders have done in the realization of SDGs by 2030. Through civil society partnerships with the government, we have organized successful localization campaigns on SDGs, as the Tonde Kamabega campaign. We have worked also collaboratively with the government in 2016 and 2020, working on the voluntary national review reports. We've convened multi-stakeholder policy dialogues and the recent SDG festivals that we've hosted across the country in Jinja, in Mubende, in Lira, and in Mbarara. We recognize and applaud the government of Uganda through the Office of the Prime Minister, specifically the SDG Secretariat, for the commendable coordination. At the national level, you've been able to bring together different stakeholders: the government, civil society, development partners, the youth, and the private sector. We thank you. Since the adoption of SDGs in 2016, civil society organizations have been quite pivotal in the rollout process, and we made significant strides in the popularization and localization of SDGs. This has been done by providing a framework for citizen mobilization and engagement to ensure effective participation in the implementation of the localization agenda. Recently, CSOs, in partnership with the SDG Secretariat, implemented the SDG Joint Initiative that gave birth to the regional and national SDG festivals, as I said, took place in different cities across the country. The SDG festivals were aimed at creating mass awareness and localizing the sustainable development goals at the grassroots level so that citizens and their leaders can appreciate the SDGs and understand their contribution toward their realization. By mention of this, of course, I would immediately want to thank the Royal Dance Embassy with their immense support and funding toward these SDG festivals, and the 23 SDG champions. They may be few in number, but they are having quite a huge trickle-down effect. We thank the Embassy for the continued support towards this work. We also acknowledge that much remains to be done to fully realize the SDGs in Uganda. As civil society, we therefore would like to highlight some key critical concerns which arose from the SDG festivals and forums that the government and stakeholders will need to focus on as we implement the decade of action for the SDGs. And these range not, of course, in any order of priority: the accessibility to PDM funds, the inaccessibility to quality education and health care services, of course, the limited understanding of what SDGs are, poor working conditions of both industrial workers and other forms of workers, and the poor infrastructure in different parts of the country. In order to fast-track the implementation of SDGs, our views are, one, that there is need and with urgency to establish multiple sources of financing for SDGs, since this remains limited. The NDP 3 midterm review states that Uganda requires at least 14% to GDP in additional financing to meet SDGs by 2030. Therefore, the more need to effectively implement the public investment financing strategy, as this will enable the achievement of SDGs. We need to strengthen multi-stakeholder engagement, since this is still limited. There is low understanding of the SDGs, especially at the local governments and different stakeholders at the national and local levels. And this, in one or another, hinders the implementation of the SDGs. 8 years since the adoption of the Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development, Uganda has made commendable efforts toward the localization of this agenda. An SDG coordination framework to ensure a coherent and consistent SDG implementation process is in place. The framework clearly highlights the roles of the different stakeholders. Admittedly, civil society remains a critical pillar. But as they say, where you meet the king is where you worship him. And as before you, Your Excellency, the Vice President, as civil society organization, we continue to play a critical role, but at the same time, we definitely would be looking for a more conducive and facilitative environment to play our role as organizations. Many times we hear negative narratives about the civil society being pervaded, but we would like to offer our unequivocal commitment to work with government, to support government for the benefit of all Ugandans, for we are Ugandans. As we gather here for the next 2 days, let us reflect on how we can make Agenda 2030 more citizen-driven and participatory for all. Let's reflect on how to build strong partnerships across different stakeholders and how the government can actually become more accountable in relation to service delivery and SDGs. In conclusion, let me end by thanking the government of Uganda for demonstrating leadership and commitment to advance the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The Uganda National NGO Forum and, of course, all the civil society organizations in this country reaffirm our commitment to collaborating with the government and all stakeholders to achieve SDGs in this country. We firmly believe that while working together, we can overcome the challenges we face and create more equitable, sustainable, and prosperous future for all of us Ugandans. I thank you, and God bless.
Thank you very much, Dr. Isova, and for all the efforts of the NGO Forum. And while we were still at it, Your Excellency, we were joined by Dr. Monica Msenero, who is the Minister of Science and Technology under the Office of the President. And we'll also be wrapping up the session, which existed a little bit earlier, that was moderated by Dr. Sechitoleko, which will be continuing after the opening session. Because of time, without any further ado, allow me invite a statement on behalf of the Interreligious Council, who are also very pivotal in leading conversations about sustainable development goals, and Bishop Joshua Lere, together with any other council presidents who would like to come with. And let's have the presentation from the Interreligious Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Bishop Joshua Lere. I'm standing here on behalf of the whole Council of Presidents of the Interreligious Council. Our chair currently, His Grace Dr. Kazimba Mugalu, is unable to be with us this evening. So I'm reading this statement on behalf of our colleagues, who are, some of whom are here, like Sheikh Waiswa, representing the Mufti of Uganda. Can you please stand up? He's representing the rest of the members of the council. He's the Deputy Mufti, the Reverend Kaiso, and our Secretary General, Mr. Joshua Chitakule, and the rest of the team is here with us. Can you please stand up, the rest of the team from Interreligious Council, so that people can see we are here in big number. Some of them had to leave because in the morning they were here. Your Excellency, the Vice President of the Republic of Uganda, the Minister of General Duties and Focal Person for SDGs, and other honorable ministers here present, honorable members of Parliament, dignitaries from government and development partners, United Nations agencies, leaders from the academia, civil society, organizations, and all international delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Praise God, from whom all blessings flow. On behalf of the Interreligious Council of Uganda, and in particular our congregants in our different denominations, we are very delighted and honored to participate in this annual SDG conference. We really want to thank you so much for involving us. We are very, very happy that you are involving us in critical discussions, especially, Your Excellency, and the Minister responsible. Thank you so much for inviting us. The IRCU, briefly, is an indigenous national-based organization founded in 2001, uniting the efforts of 7 religious institutions jointly to address issues of common concern. IRCU's member organizations are the Roman Catholic Church, the Anglican Church, the Orthodox Church, the Muslim Supreme Council, the Seventh-day Adventist Union, Born Again Faith, and the Association of Pentecostals and Evangelicals, which I lead. Participating in this year's SDG conference presents us with the opportunity as a religious fraternity to reflect and reaffirm our role in the economic and development of our country. In 2014, the IRCU hosted the African Faith Leaders Summit. The objective of our summit was for the African faith leaders to agree on a common position and a statement on the post-2015 development agenda. His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Uganda, graced the occasion and financially supported us. We were in Munyonyo at that time. We are grateful to His Excellency, the President and Government of Uganda for the support. In 2015 conference, we noted the following gaps between policy and implementation. And these are a few of our notes. One was that African countries created institutions without adequate sourcing. As a result, many good resolutions are made at the African Union and other regional blocs, but they are either partially implemented or not at all. For example, while African institutions agreed to form NEPAD, that is New Partnership for Africa's Development, only 20 African countries have subscribed to the same. Further, the African regional bloc, including the East African Community, faces challenges, non-membership subscription by partner states. Number 2 of what we noted. The other issue was about the global relationship, which is shaped by the us and they mentality. This mentality undermines our Ubuntu philosophy of finding fulfillment in the welfare of others. I am, therefore you are. You are, therefore I am. The poor and marginalized cannot be excluded because they are part and parcel of the equation of building a fair society. Number 3, the richer countries rarely met their promises of funding development. For example, the developed countries failed to meet their funding obligations to the developing countries for adaptation to the effects of climate change. Those and others were our key observations. Following that summit, the IRCU and our sister organizations in the continent committed to implement and support government and other agencies to ensure the realization of the SDGs, and since then, IRCU has especially focused on the following SDGs. SDG 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 13, 16, and 17. However, in our work, we have noted challenges and obstacles that continue to hinder the realization of the guiding philosophy of not leaving anyone behind, and we would like to share some of them with you at this conference. Your Excellency, as you are aware, many countries in Africa are oscillating between what they know needs to be done to improve the welfare of their people on one side and the sacrifices that they need to make for this to happen. For example, we all know that agriculture is the backbone of our economy here in Uganda and employs over 80% of the population. Yet, surprisingly, our investment is very minimal in that sector. Your Excellency, as you are aware, most African countries are struggling with the issue of food security. One would imagine that the technocrats would be able to determine the quantity of food that each household needs every year. This will be calculated to establish the population's annual food needs and consumption. And with that figure in mind, the technocrats would be able to know the annual amount of food that is sufficient for the country and its cost. That would mean then that furthermore, the technocrats would be able to set annual food production targets for each sub-county, even to include the quantities for export. In this way, the food security challenge would be solved. In many ways, therefore, realizing the SDGs will require us to work smart and more methodically. We feel that is the way to go, and it's easy if we handle it that way. In Uganda, government, for example, provides health services at Health Center 3, at sub-county level, Health Center 4 at constituency level, and General Hospital at district level. Using the above methodology, we should be able to know the number of health workers we need per year for the next 5 years. This will guide our health training institutions to set targets in terms of human resource requirements. Then the deployment and remuneration would follow. Moreover, the extra health workers could then be planned to be exported in other countries. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, one of the objectives of this conference is to create space for the various actors to share information and experiences in the implementation of the SDGs and the best practices to have them replicated and fast-tracked. As IRCU, one of the critical pathways that should be considered is to create a national platform to take charge of issues of mutual accountability, the shared responsibility, and a common destiny. This is the spirit. It is in this spirit that IRCU is advocating for the implementation of the Uganda National Dialogue. We are very, very passionate on this issue, where we bring all Ugandans on the same table and we discuss issues of national importance together from every sector. The Uganda National Dialogue. We still pray and request that government will continually reconsider this, a major, major, major issue for us. Ladies and gentlemen, another critical aspect related to attaining the aspiration of the SDG is harnessing the demographic dividend on the young people. The young people and children in this country, and indeed on the African continent, represent the greatest human resource ever bestowed to Uganda and Africa at large. One of the critical challenges facing this group is mindset change and the skills gap. We are aware of the government effort in infusing the new secondary curriculum with the skill development and establishing presidential zonal regional youth skilling centers. However, we think there is need for a post-university tertiary national program for mindset change aimed at the closing of the information gap for fresh graduates. This should be a requirement for recruitment in the public service. What we used to have as students from HSC going to Chankwans before they join university, before where we can really bring these young people to understanding and discussing some of these key issues together as future leaders. Your Excellency, as you are aware, SDG Goal 16 underlines the importance of promoting peaceful and inclusive societies, providing access to justice for all, and building effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. As religious leaders, we feel the need for more investment in addressing the growing level of marginalization, inequalities, and exclusivity in society. Mr. Gobi Ramadan, the Permanent Secretary of Ministry of Finance, is quoted to have said, "As long as the poor are hungry, the rich will not sleep in the neighborhood." We see this manifested daily through the current robberies, murders, dispossession of people of their property, and so on. This is causing a lot of anxiety among the population and undermines the realization of SDGs. As a global agenda, attaining SDGs obligates the country to ensure that the 17 goals are delivered to each and every human being on the planet. The fire next door is fire in your compound. The gist of this African proverb is that the conflict in the neighboring countries may have ramifications of peace, stability, and development of Uganda. Therefore, the unending wars in DRC, South Sudan, Somalia are a costly burden in terms of military deployments, disruption of trade and commerce, and the constant influx of refugees in our country. Overall, this directly impacts on the realization of the number of SDG goals. We want to thank government, Your Excellency, and appreciate the efforts of government to ensure stability in DRC, Somalia, Sudan, and elsewhere. But we think these countries must be held accountable for their failure to find sustainable solutions to their governance challenges. That's what we think. Ladies and gentlemen, as a country, we have noted with concern that some of our farmers, due to economic pressure, sell gardens with crops that are not ready for harvest, and by harvest time, they have run out of the proceeds from the sales. This practice is rampant in areas like Busoga, Teso, Mbale, Ankole, and Masindi. Therefore, for the country to realize Sustainable Development Goal 2 of hunger, government should put in place enabling policies and regulations on food production, food storage, and marketing systems in Uganda. Besides, food security and household incomes are gravely affected by the effects of climate change, resulting from wanton destruction of the country's natural resources, namely forests, wetlands, water bodies, fisheries, wildlife, and biodiversity. Most significantly, Uganda's economy is largely nature-based. Therefore, a country unmindful of its sustainable stewardship of its environment and natural resources is destined to self-destruction. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, as Council, we wish once again to call upon government and other actors to collectively address the above issues that are undermining the realization of the Sustainable Development Goals. As a faith community, we continue to commit ourselves to further strengthen our structures, to build resilience to shocks and stresses, and enhance knowledge and skills of our congregations to effectively participate in all government programs aimed at realizing the SDGs. Notably, there is need to fast-track the SDGs that are still lagging behind, such as SDG 1, SDG 2, 5, 7, 10, 13, and 16. We also pledge to offer our national faith-based structures and systems to build partnerships with government and other development actors for social mobilization, mindset change, advocacy, and implementation of the SDGs. We thank government and specifically the President of the Republic of Uganda for his continued support for the Interreligious Council of Uganda. We also thank the SDG Secretariat for the continued partnership with the Interreligious Council of Uganda. For God and my country, I'm Bishop Joshua Ruele, General Overseer of the Association of Pentecostals and Evangelicals, on behalf of our chair, Dr. Kazimba Mugalu, the Chairman, Council of Presidents of the Interreligious Council of Uganda. Thank you very much. And God bless you.
Thank you so much, Bishop Were, for that communique there, or statement that did come through. Now, ladies and gentlemen, earlier on we were talking about innovation, And one of the conversations that did come through from one of the panelists was the innovation through using banana fiber. And I loved that they've been supported by one of the UN agencies, which is UNDP. And they're thinking about now making, for us, the ladies who love our hair extensions, making biodegradable hair extensions, and that they're actually already making. And Your Excellency, if you will have some time before you leave, we have an exhibition outside. You can be able to see part of that work, which is being done not only by them, but also other persons who are doing innovations. And the one we are waiting for that he talked about is a biodegradable coffin. He was also amazed at it because he said in Africa we don't talk about death too, but I think it will be a good option to pay attention to. Why I talked about them being supported by UNDP is because UN has played a pivotal role as a development partner to ensure that we localize the Sustainable Development Goals, but so many other efforts to ensuring that we achieve everything that the Interreligious Council was also looking at, especially the demographic dividend, which we chatted about with Honorable Mohanga, and I think Honorable Amos Lugolo will be talking about the idea of our exponential population growth. And we were asking ourselves, is it an advantage? Is it a disadvantage? Is it something to pay attention to? And when we went to the conversation of family planning, interestingly, all family planning efforts were geared to women. And I love that it came from Honorable Lugolo, who is the man himself. He said, we need to focus on those who deposit the product for birth, not those who actually who deal with the incubation of the children themselves. Allow me invite the United Nations Resident Coordinator to give us a statement on behalf of the United Nations, Ms. Susan Ngongi Namondo. Let's welcome her with a round of applause.
Your Excellency, the Vice President of the Republic of Uganda, honorable ministers here present, with a very special mention to the Right Honorable Minister in charge of General Duties and the SDGs, Your Excellency, the Ambassador of Denmark to Uganda, and all our development partners here present today, the Executive Director of the Uganda NGO Forum, and all our civil society partners, private sector representatives, academia, and standing on all the earlier established protocols. On behalf of my colleagues in the United Nations system, we are delighted to be a partner to this second Uganda Annual Sustainable Development Conference. In a special way, I wish to recognize and extend my appreciation to the Right Honorable Prime Minister and the Minister for General Duties for their continued commitment to the coordination of government and its partners in the domestication and implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, and at the core of which are the 17 goals. Your Excellency, since the adoption of the SDGs in 2015, we have witnessed government's leadership and strengthening the policy and institutional coordination architecture for this agenda. Non-state actors are also working increasingly more closely with the government to support the implementation of SDGs in Uganda. The UN system is delighted to be associated with these efforts and the strong partnership that we have established with the government over the years. Our approach is premised on the strong belief that the UN member states and their people should be at the center of determining their development paths while we continue to play a facilitation role. This year's SDG conference has come at a time when there are more positive prospects for Uganda's growth and development trajectory, with the economic growth rate steadily returning to the pre-COVID-19 projections of 6 to 7% per year. Just last week, the Honorable Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development informed us that the economy is estimated to have expanded by 5.5% in 2022-23 and projected to grow by 6% in 2023-24. We are also seeing a strong recovery in the service sector as well as foreign direct investment. Despite government's commitment to implementing the 2030 Agenda and the positive outlook there remain challenges, of course, and risks to Uganda's journey to sustainable development. We cannot confidently state that the country is fully cushioned from the impacts of the global and regional conflicts, violent extremism, disease outbreaks, climate change, and environmental disasters. The unfortunate incident in Kasese, where innocent school children lost their lives and others were abducted at the hands of a suspected terrorist group, is a reminder that the risk of insecurity and violence is real and has far-reaching consequences on our development progress. The positive economic growth rate also remains somewhat elusive to the ordinary Ugandan, as this is not always felt in everybody's pockets. Certain groups, and we heard this from Dr. Albert earlier today, certain groups such as people with disabilities, women and girls, orphans, vulnerable children, indigenous people, refugees, among others, continue to face varying social and economic exclusion. In the midterm review of the third National Development Plan, the National Planning Authority revealed that only 17% of the targeted results have been achieved thus far. This conference presents a great opportunity to reflect on our journey and renew Uganda's efforts to accelerate the achievements of these SDGs. Fortunately, we have Vision 2040, the National Development Plans, and other national policy and legal frameworks through which SDGs are implemented. There is no separate implementation architecture for the SDGs besides the national policy and institutional provisions. This conference also comes at an opportune moment when the global community is preparing for the SDG Summit that will be convened 18 to 19 September 2023 as part of the United Nations General Assembly. During the summit, heads of state and governments will carry out a comprehensive review of the state of the SDGs and their implementation, and provide high-level political guidance on transformative and accelerated actions to realize it by 2030. These deliberations will also engage the thought leaders from government, international organizations, the private sector, civil society, and other stakeholders through a series of high-level meetings with the decision makers. The outcomes of the SDG conference and the associated engagements of the Office of the Prime Minister that the Office of the Prime Minister has led at the subnational level will therefore inform Uganda's contribution to the discussions at the SDG Summit. Whereas the country faces challenges and risks in its pursuit to sustainable development as outlined by earlier speakers, I wish to acknowledge that many of these are not unique to Uganda at all. Other developing countries and the world's most vulnerable people are bearing similar consequences of slowed transformation. The UN Secretary General, in his report on the status of the progress of the SDGs, has identified several issues, and I will pick a few of those. Firstly, only 12% of the SDG indicators are on track. Close to half are moderately or severely off track, and 30% have either seen no movement or regressed below the 2015 baseline. If the current trends on SDGs are maintained, only about 1/3 of countries will meet the target to halve national poverty levels. Here in Uganda, the national poverty head count has remained higher, with the 19.7% registered in 2012-2013. The Secretary General also notes that the world is back to hunger levels not seen since 2005, and food prices remain higher in more countries than in the period of 2015-2019. We are also very far from winning the battle against inequality, moving at a pace that will take the world 286 years to close gender gaps in legal protection and removing discriminatory laws. With the mixed picture on our progress and the multiple uncertainties that we are faced with, there is need for accelerated efforts by all stakeholders. And if you allow me, let me offer a few ideas that could be important in our reflection in this dialogue, as well as in the upcoming discussions on the 4th National Development Plan. I think first and foremost, as most will agree, government really is our driver in everything that we do, either directly or indirectly. And it is commendable that the most critical policy and planning instruments and institutions have been put in these. However, for several reasons, that we still have gaps in implementation, and that was discussed also earlier today. Public institutions have not been fully equipped with the necessary human resources and appropriate infrastructure that can meet today's dynamics. Even with the clear evidence of the potential of digital systems to transform the effectiveness of the public sector, uptake has been slow. Institutions need to be equipped to steer and leverage digital technologies in an inclusive manner to advance development. There's also need for government to lead partners in putting in place an even more effective development partnership architecture that promotes regular dialogue, accountability, and trust between the public sector and other supportive development actors. Private sector. We all know that the private sector is a critical driver of innovation, productivity, employment, and economic growth. We must take advantage of the opportunity that world over, business leaders are gradually recognizing the significance and urgency of integrating sustainability into their business practices and strategies to achieve long-term success. However, achieving full alignment to sustainability requires that government policies and regulations must provide a more enabling environment that motivates and facilitates sustainable practices. Private sector engagement might also benefit from a more structure and engagement. Financing. Development financing remains one of the major constraints on how fast we can implement and achieve the SDGs. And I really wish to commend the efforts of the Ministry of Finance and its partners towards improving domestic revenue mobilization. The other source has been concessional and non-concessional borrowing. However, it should also be acknowledged that traditional sources of financing will, in the short term anyways, not be adequate to address today's development needs and challenges. The public investment financing strategy that the government has recently produced has already outlined a diverse range of development financing options that could complement these traditional sources to fund development priorities while reducing the risk of debt distress. This strategy could go a long way in transforming Uganda's development financing architecture, but its implementation, well, the strategy was just released, but we're looking forward to the implementation. In line with the Secretary General's rescue plan, and that's rescue plan globally, but here in Uganda, the UN remains committed to supporting government to implement the strategy, and a need to reap the data dividend. Access to timely and high-quality disaggregated data is essential for monitoring, follow-up, and review for more efficient and effective policy and decision-making. As you've heard from UBOS earlier today and from the findings of the joint recent UN-UBOS status review of data and statistics, data availability has improved, but we are not quite where we need to be yet. There are significant challenges on the enabling legal and policy environment, inadequate capacity for data production, slow adoption of advanced technologies in the data value chain, and inadequate use for data for decision making. To reach the target of securing data for at least 90% of the SDG targets in each country by 2027. It will therefore require us embracing new and innovative data sources and approaches, as well as adopting data governance and protection policies to address the risks. We must also increase domestic financing for data and statistics by 50% from current levels by 2030. I'm pleased to inform you that UBUS and the UN system in Uganda have already started on this journey through a US $42 million joint program for data and statistics that has been developed to consolidate support for the national statistics system. And lastly, the need for renewed efforts to protect the environment. Our quality of life will greatly depend on how best we protect the environment, which is the foundation for our well-being. Therefore, we have no choice but to guard against degradation of ecosystems, pollution, climate change, biodiversity loss. The potential consequences of environmental destruction, such as hunger, poverty, conflict, natural disasters, and public health emergencies, are unbearable for us not to act. So those are just some ideas from the UN family, and of course, Your Excellency, I'm speaking on behalf of the 29 UN agencies that are here in Uganda. I think we're very pleased about this second National SDG conference. We look forward to really being part of the conversation. We look forward to continuing that work in the implementation. And it is my hope that we will all find ideas that we can work on to speed on acceleration of the progress that we're all seeking. And on that note, I thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Susan Ngongi Namondo, who is the UN RC here in Uganda. And like she said, she's representing quite a number. And part of the team I know is here. And I will later on be letting you in, but I can see many of the lead reps of the various UN agencies right here with us. She, of course, spoke about the gender gap and that we can't even talk about more than 200 years to close that, and it was made worse by COVID-19. The effects of COVID-19, which we're still feeling right now, have been made worse, and that gender gap has been made worse and widened more. But also on the environment, I love to say one statement, that we can't live without the environment, but the environment can live without us. We can all die and the environment will stay, but we can't live without it. Without any further ado, allow me invite our next speaker, who also in the capacity of the Prime Minister will be inviting our chief guest tonight. But she is not just here as the Minister of General Duties under the Office of the Prime Minister, but she's the focal point minister of the Sustainable Development Goals. And Uganda was one of the first countries to actually go ahead and do something like that, that you have a minister who focuses on Sustainable Development Goals. There is a secretariat that is headed by Dr. Albert Byomgisha right here. Ladies and gentlemen, with a thunderous applause, allow me invite the Right Honorable Justin Kasule Lumumba to speak to us, and later invite the chief guest. That wasn't big enough. Let's give her a much bigger one, because it's for our efforts that we are here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mildred. Your Excellency Jessica Alupo Epere Rose, the Vice President of the Republic of Uganda, who is representing His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, the President of the Republic of Uganda. My colleagues, ministers, Honorable Monica Msenero, the Minister for Science and Technology, Honorable Margaret Muhanga, Annette Mugisa, the Minister for State for Health. Why are you shaking your head? I know you. The Head of Public Service and Secretary to Cabinet, the Head of Public Service and Deputy Secretary to Cabinet, the UN Resident Coordinator and the UN Family, Your Excellency, the Danish Ambassador, and all those representing the different embassies, our development partners, heads of missions and agencies, governors and leaders from local governments, representatives from the private sector, media, civil society, academia, the young, the mature, the elders, the old, most importantly, our leaders from the Interreligious Council. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring you apologies from Right Honorable Robin Anabanja, who has not been able to make it, because when we made adjustments in our program, she had to go and do other engagements in other places. And here I am to represent her, but also at the same time as the focal point minister in charge of the SDGs. Your Excellency, allow me inform you of the team that is with you here today. In addition to those who are online, Your Excellency, you have ministers present here, permanent secretaries, technical officers from ministries, departments, and agencies. We have development partners. We have UN agencies, especially the UN family. We have the representatives from the different embassies and heads of missions, interreligious council, local government representatives, where we have the LC5 chairpersons, who prefer these days to be called governors, chief administrative officers, resident district commissioners, the executive director and team from the NGO Bureau and World Civil Society Organization, the private sector, the youth, the young people, and we, the elders. We're also here amongst the teams here with you. Welcome everybody. Can we welcome everybody? On behalf of the Prime Minister and the Office of the Prime Minister and the teams that have worked on this year's process led by the SDG Secretariat under Dr. Albert Byamugisha. Where is Dr. Albert Byamugisha? Can you stand up so that the Vice President can see you? He's our coordinator in this effort and works with the team. Members from the SDG Secretariat, wherever you are, can you wave? Even those who are outside, can you wave? We want to thank you. We are greatly honored that you have taken time off your busy schedules to join us for this important conference. In line with our annual practice of consulting and ensuring that nobody is left behind, this conference was preceded by consultations in 4 regional centers of Uganda: Mubende in central Uganda, Lira in northern Uganda, Mbarara in western Uganda, Jinja in eastern Uganda. Your Excellency, before, in the first session where we had panelists and questions were put to them, one member raised that, why did you go to Lira? Why didn't you go to Karamoja? Why didn't you go to West Nile? Last year we were in Gulu. This year we are in Lira. Next year, the Muslims will say, Inshallah. We will either be in West Nile or Karamoja for northern Uganda. But when we have the regional consultative meetings and discussions, yes, we were in Lira, but we had leaders from the whole, all the parts, all the sub-regions, all the districts from in northern Uganda, the same to the other areas. Last year in eastern Uganda, we were in Mbale. This year we were in Jinja. Next year we'll have to go to either Soroti or Kapcholwa, because we have to keep moving to different parts of the country. And also the same to other parts. Last year we were in Hoima, this year we were in Mbarara. So we move. So I want to inform my mother who raised it that next year we shall be in another place, and invite other leaders from other sub-regions to also come to that particular city or center to be able to discuss with us. In each of the regions, several events were held. Activities were undertaken to popularize and localize the SDGs. These include the youth skilling event, a people's baraza, public processions, among others. I would like to thank the government of Denmark for supporting this work, and the SDG champions under the Uganda National NGO Forum in collaboration with the SDG Secretariat for taking the lead in this activity. The regional events were crowned with the convening of the Stakeholders Forum, which brought together local leaders from the surrounding districts in each of the regions. We spent a day deliberating on the ways in which we could accelerate the attainment of SDGs through various government programs that government is undertaking. In all the meetings, participants recognized that as a country and the world, we are confronted with a challenging reality. We are at the midpoint of the 2030 agenda, and yet some of the SDGs are off track. 7 years to go for us to go and register our success or failure at the global platform. But as the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has said, world leaders need to come together at the 2023 SDG Summit in September to deliver a rescue plan for people and the planet. In Uganda, the parish development model is our rescue plan. We recognize that while eradicating poverty is related to SDG 1, we also know that through the 7 pillars of the parish development model, we shall be able to target the several SDGs, moreover at household level. Your Excellency, during the regional consultation, several issues were raised and are contained in outcome document that my team has put together. These include issues relating to service delivery, specifically accessibility and quality of service, such as education and health. Poverty was also another issue raised during the People's SDG Festival in Imbarara, Mubende, Lira, and Jinja cities. But participants acknowledge the government efforts to address poverty through infrastructure development and agricultural extension programs like Myoga, the financial inclusion pillar under the parish development model. Participants were able to tell us where we have been able to register success so far, were able to tell us what is not going on well, and giving us solutions that are applicable to their particular areas. We've compiled this report, and for the good of all of us, for the good of the success of the implementation of the parish development model that is intended to bring the 38 into the money economy, this will be shared, Your Excellency, with your permission, even at cabinet level. Some of the proposed solutions that stakeholders raised included increased investments, especially in education, targeting interventions to address economic barriers, most especially in the area of technical education. We need, as government, to come up and sensitize our community to appreciate skilling and technical education in this country, because government has put up structures, but community has not utilized these structures. The majority of the community members prefer to go for university education, leaving this technical education where people will come out skilled, ready to employ themselves and even employ others. All cities in the 3 regions emphasized that urban planning is a crucial aspect of state development that ensures organized growth and sustainable use of resources within the city. An essential part of this process involves regulating land development. All land development, including construction projects, zoning changes, and modifications of land use, were going through challenges. The community has not appreciated this, and in some of the areas, some of the leaders themselves have not realized the importance. This gives us challenges, especially having organized settlement. On vulnerable groups, participants in northern and central regions emphasize the importance of supporting vulnerable groups, such as people with disabilities, women, and children. Recognizing the unique challenges faced by these groups, there was a call for specific projects and initiatives to address their needs and promote their rights further, in addition to what is happening now, so that they are not left behind. Children stressed the importance of protecting and promoting the rights of children. They called for initiatives that ensure access to quality education, health care, and safe environment for children to grow and thrive. Special mention was made on issues like child labor, child marriage, and child abuse. Teenage pregnancies are still rampant, and these were exacerbated by the COVID-19. Participants advocated for more child-friendly policies in addition to the existing policies, and also for in-depth discussion, creating awareness and community-based programs that promote child welfare and development. More investments in education and science, technology, and innovation-driven skills revolutions ensure sustainable and inclusive economic growth, manufacturing, and industrialization. We were challenged that we need to speed up and expedite the process of establishing the regional industrial parks that we promised in our NRM manifesto during the last campaigns. And they said we should put more emphasis on value addition, though this has already been mentioned in the budget speech, to make sure that whatever will be coming out from the parish development model is received and is value addition, so that we're able to fetch more money with what we have. Appreciation goes to all development partners, the United Nations family, through the UN Resident Coordinator's Office and the UN systems in Uganda, all other development partners, civil society organizations, the Uganda National NGO Forum, World Vision, Interreligious Council, that have supported us. But I want to report to you, Your Excellency, we have done our part, we have done our work, but we still have more work to do. In addition to the challenges that we are still faced with as a country, we still have to work with more other groups to be brought on board. We've worked with Parliament, we've worked with Judiciary, but we are yet to have a roundtable discussion with the security agencies in this country to also make sure we bring them on board on issues of SDGs. What they do enables us to do work and achieve all of the other SDGs. But what we need is just to bring it to their attention and make them aware that they are also part of the teams that are working hard to make sure we achieve the SDGs. As you may know, the NRM government, under the leadership of His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, we have made significant strides in the journey to achieve the SDGs. But what we need now is to simplify for the ordinary person. Because whatever you do every day in your life, in your home, wherever you wake up, to make sure that you offer the best to yourself as an individual, to offer the best to your family, you are scoring into the SDG goals. So, in addition, in 2018, the government put in place the National Teachers Policy to facilitate the training of teachers who are competent to deliver quality education and programs such as the Universal Primary Education, which has since 1997 been one of Uganda's policy tools for reducing poverty. And this has been part of the reasons why the poverty we have been able to solve and remain with only the 38 to bring in the money economy. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, in pursuing the Sustainable Development Agenda, the government is guided by the principle of inclusion, leaving no one behind, and reaching the farthest first. That is why our dear President has so far put up 16 presidential industrial skilling hubs to equip Ugandans with or without formal education with vocational skills free of charge, and support them in creating their own jobs and also employing others. The parish development model is one which is targeting everybody, and that we must work day and night to make sure we bring everybody in the money economy. Once we achieve SDG number 1, no poverty, it will be easy to achieve the rest. The challenges are being addressed through the operationalization of SDG localization guidelines and voluntary local reviews at the lower and upper local government levels, as well as voluntary reviews that we must do every year as a country. I'm confident that the outcomes of this second annual SDG conference will be transformative, address challenges we face, and create new opportunities towards the attainment of the SDGs. I want to thank those who are online. I've been seeing your comments. Thank you for being very active. We appreciate your support and your participation. with these few words, it is my pleasure to invite Her Excellency Jessica Alupo Rose Epel, the Vice President of the Republic of Uganda, who is representing the President of Uganda, to come and address us and declare this conference open. Your Excellency, you are welcome. Can we please clap? Let me do the usual one. 1, 2, 3, start. Please sit down, take your seat. The Honorable Justin Kasule Lumumba, the Minister, the General Duties in charge of SDGs in the Office of the Prime Minister, and colleagues, ministers present, Honorable Members of Parliament present, Excellencies, the ambassadors, namely Excellency the Ambassador of Denmark to Uganda, the civil society, who were ably represented here by the ED NGO Bureau, the religious leaders, Bishop Dr. Joshua Luere, and the whole team, the UN family, distinguished participants, senior government officials, the local government leaders, ladies and gentlemen. As you have already been told, I am here to read to you the message of His Excellency the President of the Republic of Uganda. But before I read it, allow me to appreciate your flexibility, because this session was supposed to have taken place early morning today, but apparently I got the assignment when I was already in the countryside doing other equally very important responsibilities. But when I requested that we handle the session in the evening, the organizers of the conference responded to me on the affirmative. So I thank you very sincerely. Let me also bring you warm greetings from His Excellency the President, who you prayed so hard for God to heal a few days ago. And you all know that he's now COVID-free. So he greeted you very emphatically. And I also bring you warm greetings from Mama Janet, the Minister of Education and Sports, who is the First Lady. I have a very short message to read or to present to you. But before I read it, let me thank Bishop Luere for your comments about the issues and the concerns of the religious leaders about SDGs, and promise that when the Honorable Justin Lumumba concludes with you, she will share all these issues with members of cabinet. We shall discuss and make responses, where I will again call upon all of you to participate in the interventions of the challenges that you have raised across the country. I would also like to thank the ED of the NGO Bureau. Thank you very much for your comments. And having come from the village this morning, I want to remind all of you that government appreciates the role and responsibility that you play. All of you and the religious leaders and the UN family. You will find civil society officers or field officers deep in villages with motorcycles, with mud in their feet, when they are trying to do advocacy for all the people across the country to embrace programs of government, but also to embrace the interventions that are being extended to them by civil society and also the religious leaders. So we sincerely appreciate the effort. You reach every corner of the country. And of course, the existence of the religious leaders in all corners of Uganda cannot be overemphasized. You are in every village, you are in every parish, you are in every sub-county. I would like to thank the message of the Right Honorable Kasule Lumumba, especially the fact that she has underscored a point of one of the pillars of parish development model, that is financial inclusion, which was a point of focus almost all the leaders who have spoken here. I will have a plea to make to the religious leaders and also the civil society, but also the LC 5 chairpersons. The government, as you may wish to note, is rolling out that very important parish development model with a view of capturing all those 39% households which are outside the money economy. But I have personally picked very key challenges which we can all tackle when we are interfacing with members of the community. One of them is that the people in the villages are fearing to borrow this credit or to participate in the parish development model because they think that when they fail to pay, their land will be taken. I think that is a very simple point which religious leaders, civil society can explain even in one day, and everyone should be able to understand that it is not meant to take their land, but it's meant to uplift them economically. But secondly also, the people still think that when they borrow this money, after 1 month, government will be asking them to pay in their parish circles. So a clarification still needs to be given to them that they can only pay this money, begin paying this money after 2 years, a maximum period of 2 years. And then they can even pay in installments until the 3rd year ends. Many in villages are not aware about that. So I would like, at an appropriate time, the stakeholders here, the Honorable Lumumba, also to have those key highlights on what they can remind the members of the community when they are at the pulpit, when they are in villages doing some work of their programs, as we have all witnessed, the civil society. So for now, let me read to you the message from His Excellency, the President. I salute you all for taking part in the 2nd Uganda Annual Sustainable Development Goals Conference. Uganda remains on course to achieve all the SDGs in partnership with our development partners. Government supports the SDGs because they represent the global aspirations of guaranteeing a decent and prosperous life for all the inhabitants of the earth. The NRM strategy for accelerating the progress towards achieving the SDGs and Agenda 2063 is to trigger the socio-economic transformation of society. We in Uganda and most parts of Africa have been struggling
with the problem of the backward nature of our societies. This backwardness is on the account of preserving the subsistence modes of production. You cannot achieve the SDGs if the society remains backward. That's why we in the NRM talk of socio-economic transformation, which aims at triggering change from mainly peasant societies to middle-income, middle-class, and skilled societies, like those in Europe and the United States of America. If a society does not evolve from the lower modes of social organization, it cannot develop and prosper. Parochial societies such as the hunter-gatherer societies and the peasant societies have narrow interests. All their efforts are geared towards getting food. They work only for food. They do not know about the importance of schools, hospitals, roads, electricity, the railway, markets, etc. Therefore, we must work to eliminate social backwardness, which is responsible for underdevelopment. Since 1986, the NRM government has been working towards expanding the monetization of the economy so that the whole society goes to the money economy to produce for the stomach and for the pocket. We have managed to mobilize and support Ugandans to select enterprises where they can participate in order to earn incomes to feed their families, but also to deal with non-money needs. Build a better house, have better clothes, have electricity in their houses, have piped water, education, etc. The four sectors for the creation of wealth and jobs are commercial, agriculture, manufacturing, industry, services, and ICT. Therefore, the qualitative and quantitative growth of society are the preconditions for achieving all the Sustainable Development Goals. I thank you all and wish you fruitful deliberations at the second Uganda Sustainable Development Goals Conference. The second Uganda Annual Sustainable Development Goals Conference 2023 is officially open. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Your Excellency. We actually had a panel that was halfway done by the time that you came in. And as you finished speaking to Right Honorable Kasule, I would only seek your indulgence, if you will allow, to give us probably an extra just 20 minutes with us to be able to conclude this before we officially say bye. But if that is not possible, I'll be able to get it from you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Her Excellency has actually given us a go-ahead for the next few minutes. The panel was actually halfway, so it will be wrapping up. And allow me invite Dr. Sechitoleko once again to allow her panel back to wind up with the conversation. Dr. Victoria, back to you. Dr. Amina Zawede and the panelists, please. I'm going to request that we all step up once again together with Professor Ariho, who gave the keynote address for the panel.
Thank you. Can I please get my panel back? Your Excellency, the Vice President, Madam Alupo, the Minister from the Prime Minister's Office, all the ministers, members of Parliament, and all protocol observed. Your Excellency, before you came in, Professor Aruho, who is a professor in technology, and actually his job is to incubate others, had given the keynote address. Then he was followed by Mr. Kawanguzi, the youth, basically because we are here to discuss the future, and the future belongs to the youth. Then we heard from Mr. Kimani, who was talking about using what you have, innovating and coming up with things like
UBC, inspiring Uganda. Uganda ne Uganda waraji bakusako manramechi konatela tekobuseko season yakuna savu July kuma man papa's hall usasule kwa MTN mobile money usasule gumu chitundu MTN usasule nega nkomitano iga stemu kagatano stamu enda munana hasha kwa MTN ufune tiketi yokati wabula kumulyango